Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. I am Sarah Burr, author of the new Book Blogger Mysteries, which Over My Dead blog just came out last week. Still very excited and feeling those post-release vibes. And I'm joined by my wonderful co-host.
That would be me. I am J.C. Kenney, and I am the author of the Alley Cobb and the Darcy Gone Mysteries. And I tell you what, folks, it's Thursday evening. Weekend's almost here. We have a very special show for you tonight because if you aren't aware, this Saturday, November 11th, is Veterans Day. And it's an important day here for those of us here in the U.S. to take a moment to remember those who have served our country over the years. And it just so happens that tonight, our guest, Mike Krentz, is a military veteran. And, you know, things just came together. We're going to talk some military thrillers and things like that. And on behalf of the show, we want to send a shout out to all of our veterans out there. Thank you so much, truly, from the bottom of our hearts for what you've done. And what you continue to do for those of us to keep us safe here at home. And Mike, thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate we can't thank you enough for your years of service. So we'll just say we appreciate it very, very much.
Well, thank you, Jim. It was my honor to serve. And I like to say I got more out of it than I gave, which was just because it was such a rewarding experience and such an honor to wear the cloth of the nation, as we used to say. So I'm very, very happy to be here to talk about my new military fiction series and my medical thriller series as well. So I'm looking forward to our chat.
It's going to be a great hour. And Mike, we have a bunch of people chiming into chat right now, saying hello and good evening and thanking you for your service. And as we kind of cue things up here and get ready to get bookish, I'm wondering if you could just take a few moments to share a bit about not only your writing career, but your career that brought you to be writing about military conspiracy thrillers and medical conspiracy thrillers and all of these amazing stories.
Sure. I really always wanted to be a writer. I majored in English in college. My dad told me I needed to have a profession. And my mother was a nurse, and she had enamored me with the medical field ever since I was a little kid. So I went to medical school, and spent the first half of my life in practice of emergency medicine in civilian public hospitals. And long about 1991, when the Persian Gulf War first started, and I had some friends who were military reservists, and I thought, that might be something I want to do. So I got a hold of, actually a Navy nurse corps recruiter got a hold of me and set the hook and got me interested in becoming a Navy flight surgeon. And I did that. I did that for 20 years, had a wonderful, wonderful career, as I said. As a physician, it was an honor to serve those who actually do the frontline work, whether it's on Navy ships. We also covered the Marine Corps. It was such an honor, and I learned so much that when it came time to leave, because they weren't going to let me stay because they thought I was too old, I decided to start writing about it, and that's how the Mahoney Squire series was born, roughly 12 years ago now.
This story has gone on quite the journey then.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm wondering, if you can share a little bit about how Kate, your protagonist, came to be from all of these experiences that that you encountered when you were helping and taking care of these individuals. How did Kate grow out of those experiences?
Well, this gets very somewhat intense for me, because one of the experiences that I had, multiple experiences that I had, again, as a Navy physician and as a flight surgeon and a fleet surgeon, working directly with primarily naval aviators, and surface warfare officers as well. It became very clear to me that women, um, they had a harder time making it. That's just the God's honest truth. And so I became very, very respectful and honored women in the Navy, particularly those who had succeeded in naval aviation, which was very much a male-dominated world when I first joined the Navy. And I just had an incredible amount of respect for these wonderful human beings who not only accomplished the mission and epitomized the core values of honor, courage, and commitment, but they had family responsibilities, they had relationship responsibilities, and that's not to say that men don't. Of course we do, but we had a leg up in the military, and so a woman like Kate Mahoney, who is not based on any particular woman that I know, she's really a composite, has to fight the dual battles. She's in a very, very important, very stressful leadership position in the 7th Fleet, in an area of operations that includes the People's Republic of China, North Korea, several other potential adversaries and friends. And at the same time, she's got a teenager back home, and she's divorced, toxic marriage. So there's no ex-husband in the scene to help her. So she has to just do it all. And that's her story. That's how she came to be.
And that is in the first book of the series, is Her Show of Force, which just came out again, I guess, was kind of reborn last month. October 3rd was release date. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about the book in general? Kind of give us the kind of the elevator pitch, as it were.
Well, sure. It actually is a little bit what I just said, is that Kate Mahoney, is a fairly new Navy captain, just coming out of command of an aviation squadron. She failed to select for major command. Was it because she was a woman? We don't really know. She doesn't know. So she's taking this job as the director of operations for the 7th Fleet. Now, the 7th Fleet is responsible for the entire what's called forward deployed naval force throughout the Western Pacific, all the way from Russia to Australia and every place in between. And as I said, it's a very potentially contentious area of operations, because you've got the People's Republic of China, who is building a very, very strong Navy. You've got the North Korea situation, which is never going to be stable. And there's an event that happens, actually, that triggers a potential international incident. And she's in charge of figuring out the operations, but she's got a couple of bosses that don't really think this woman is going to be up to the task. So she not only has to solve the operational issues, she has to prove herself to these sexist leaders. Meanwhile, back in the United States, she's got a teenage son, and he's getting himself into trouble. So she's got to deal with that. The son is staying with her sister, who's also divorced. So she's got something going on in the Western Pacific and something going on in the Western United States, and it's all happening at the same time. And how does she deal with all that conflict and all those stressors? And that's pretty much the book.
I think the title is really just like such a great title to capture all of the pressures that Kate is dealing with, yet we see her strength, we see her resolve, and her show of force. I think that is a beautiful title.
Well, thank you. And that's I need to acknowledge my wife who came up with that title. But that's actually it's a term of art in the Navy. A show of force is literally if somebody like Kim Jong-un, for instance, is acting out. You bring all of your assets in theater and you park them on his doorstep and you say, "You want to take us on, buddy? Okay, because this is our show of force. If you're gonna try to pull anything off," and Kate actually takes that same paradigm into her personal life to solve that conflict.
Well, Kate's a total boss, and one of the things that I'd love to know is in reading her show of force, and I haven't finished it, but folks, you got to get it. You can thank me later. But it's one of those things that I know virtually nothing about the day-to-day workings of any of the military branches. We just see what we see on TV or read in the paper. And, right from the beginning, you so artfully give us all of this, what seems to me like a lot of detail about classifications in the different kinds of ships, not only ours, but the South Koreans and the North Koreans early on. Did you have to get permission from anybody, on the military end, or did you have to run your book by anybody in the military to make sure that, they were like, okay, that's fine. Everything in there is fine. No military secrets or anything like that.
This is classified.
Yeah.
Well, I've always been a believer that it's easier to get forgiveness than permission.
Okay.
But I was also very careful not to include any classified material in there. One of the things that I really admired about some of my colleagues, especially the professional military folks, is how they could talk about classified material without divulging the material itself. And I adopted some of those terms, some of those different ways of referring to, say, North Korea through some sort of metaphor, for instance, that only somebody else in the business would get it.
Okay.
And I thought that was masterful use of language amongst my shipmates. But no, I didn't run it by anybody. And I haven't had any complaints either, so it must have worked out.
All I know is that I'm reading this stuff. It's like, man, this is, I feel like I'm right there next to, the folks. And, I don't want to give too much away, but I felt bad that I was right next to, early in the story, the South Korean ship. And that's all I'm going to say.
And Mike, we have within the chat right now, viewer Vicky is saying that they're adding your books to their to get list, and intrigues that your main character is a woman in the military, and thank you for doing so, for kind of showing the light on a woman's experience. Vicky is 22 years in the Air Force, retired, says had its joys and difficulties, and is very much looking forward to reading her show of force. So Vicky, thank you for joining us and for your service. And to JC's point about how vividly you write these scenes, Mike, in reading the praise for your books, you're always complimented on how much you're driving the action and how you're pushing, the scene forward with every single word that you're giving us. Can you, maybe from a craft point of view, can you talk about how is that something that comes naturally to you? Is that something that you learn to do? Is that something that the material naturally is giving to you? How does that voice get on the paper?
So interestingly enough, Her Show of Force started out as a script for a TV pilot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, a shipmate and I came up with this idea while we were on Liberty, having dinner in Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia. And we said, wouldn't it be fun to write a TV script and a TV series about all the stuff that happens here? So the first version was exactly that. And then I decided through some mentorship and whatnot, that it really needed to be a novel. But I think I've taken that sort of cinematic approach to my writing, where I see the scene and I see the characters interact and I see the action. You'll find that it may be a little short on a lot of description of the setting. I do try to, at least put the reader in the setting, but it's all about the action and very much about the dialogue. So I think I have like I said, a cinematic approach to it, and that's how I like to write.
And how, if you don't mind me asking, that you spoke about your mentor working on the script and thus deciding that it needed to be a novel. What was that like aha moment or that light bulb moment that made you realize that, this story is going to be served better or more completely through a novel?
The aha moment there was the novel. The format allows me to get inside the character's head and I do a lot of internal dialogue or monologue where I show what the character is thinking while he or she is acting. And if you're a really, really good script writer, you can show that, but I was never going to be that good at it. And so it's much easier and I think a more rounded experience for me to do it in a fiction novel sort of way. Plus, I can shift points of view. I do like to use several points of view in all my novels, which allows me to compare and contrast how different characters are seeing the same experience.
And I tell you what, that's again going back to Her Show of Force. You're switching back between the Pacific and California. Where Kate is one place and her son is so far away. As a reader, you immediately pick up on, without you really, as the author, you don't have to tell us, just with how you've written, you realize how much pressure Kate's under, because yes, she has this job. And it's one thing as a parent to say, okay, yes, I'm on the other side of the country, but I'll be able to be home and maybe for the weekend. But for somebody to be halfway across the world is such a different level of challenge. Can you talk a little bit about your motivations behind putting a parent-child relationship into the story?
Well, that's a great question. It came naturally. I was deployed multiple times throughout my Navy career. Fortunately, my wife was able to take care of the children and the household and keep everything running. But I missed out on a lot of things. I missed out on major major milestones in my kids' lives. Fortunately, none of them got into trouble like Kate's son does. They weren't acting out, probably because they had a strong mother there guiding them. So it just seemed like the natural conflict to put in front of this particular protagonist. And it could happen to men as well, but typically women are the caregivers and the child raisers, and to get into that operational tempo when there's conflict in the area, and it could become international in scope, and your world just ratchets down to like right here, and everything outside of it is just out of your consciousness. But you can't let your kids be totally out of view, and that was what I was trying to show. And it's almost like Patrick, who's the son, it's almost like he's demanding his mom's attention by doing what he does, which is totally understandable in a 14-year-old.
And not only that, folks, just to mention that he's 14 years old and he's spent most, if not all of his life with his mom overseas, correct?
That's, well, yes, or yeah, deployed or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about the locations that you're exploring in these here with how do you bring to life a country that you're maybe a reader may not be familiar with at all or know very little about? How do you decide and how do you begin to set the scene for folks when it comes to real places in the world? You know, because JC and I, we create these cozy little towns where everybody's, you know, in their bubble, but you're portraying the greater world. So how do you approach the scene creation and the setting creation when you're writing Kate's story?
One of the benefits of being assigned to the 7th Fleet as my final assignment in the Navy, and I got to do it for 3 years. The 7th Fleet basically has, this is oversimplifying, but it has 2 missions. One is to keep the peace and to prepare for war if it ever happens. The other is to do diplomacy, basically, to show the hand of friendship to our allies. So on the fleet flagship, the Blue Ridge, which I renamed the Shenandoah in the book, we went to all those places that I've mentioned, and we did interact with particularly the navies from all these various nations. So the scenes, the settings, those different places where it takes place, I've been to all of them, and so it was pretty easy to describe them. I was lucky to get to do all that. Thank you, taxpayers. Appreciate it.
Well, and just a couple of, I tell you what, folks, thanks for all your great questions and comments here. Robin asked that Robin got here just a little bit late. So Mike, Robin was asking if you could tell us again when you served.
Right. I was fortunate. I mean, I got to do this because I was a physician and they needed physicians. So it was a midlife thing. So I served from 1991 to 2012, almost exactly 20 years. And I had to get a couple of age waivers to do that. And I really probably would have continued, but they said, yeah, no, you got to give the young guys a chance too. So you're done.
Well, and Robin also goes on to mention that she served 14 years in the Air Force medical supply, which allowed a close working environment with flight surgeons. And almost all of them were decent humans, more focused on their job than their ranks. So there you go. Shout out to all of you surgeons.
Well, thank you. And you know, it's a special privilege as a physician or a nurse, or most especially the hospital corpsmen. God love those guys and gals. It's really a privilege to serve, and it's not without its risks. I can tell stories of people, medical folks who lost their lives in the line of duty, and it's a terribly sad thing, but it's what we sign up for, and we do make that commitment.
And again, not to get too heavy, but the rest of us are in our, we owe you a debt of gratitude that we can't repay. So, again, thank you for that. I want to take a second and kind of shift gears a little bit, because we've mentioned them in passing a little bit, but you also have another a 2-book series, a Dr. ZACK WINSTON medical thrillers. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. As I think I mentioned, my civilian practice was in the specialty of emergency medicine, and I also did a couple tours in emergency medicine in Navy hospitals during my Navy career. And I wanted to write medical stuff, medical thrillers, and so Dr. ZACK WINSTON is an emergency physician, former Navy doctor, who left the Navy under a significant cloud, and he was basically invited to leave the Navy. That's not me, by the way. It's not about me. And so he's rebuilding his life, practicing emergency medicine in a hospital in the DC area, and he has one of those terrible events that in emergency medicine you always fear is, remember that patient you saw yesterday and sent home? That's what happens. He saw a patient yesterday and sent him home, and he comes back in full cardiac arrest, and he doesn't know why, and he can't save him. So not only is he really upset and confused and doesn't know why this happened, so happens the guy's wife is the head of the ICU in the same hospital. So he ends up getting sued. He has a woman, a defense attorney, with whom he becomes a friend. They develop an interesting relationship, because he's not good at relating with women, and he doesn't know how to be really honest. And so there's that whole flawed piece to him. But anyway, it turns out to be that the malpractice suit and the death was really all about something else that eventually they discovered, much to their own personal peril. And the second book brings Zach's teenage daughter, starting to see a trend here, teenage daughter into the picture, and she's the product of a broken home, and wants to get to know her dad better, and she gets involved in a conspiracy, unbeknownst to her, gets involved into a conspiracy that threatens her life and well-being. And now Zach and his lawyer friend Bridget Larson are back into the fray, trying to figure out what in the hell's going on here.
Folks, what you're getting here is, like Mark Twain said, write what you know. So Mike is serving it up for us right here.
Well, it also sounds and to your point, Mike, where you said like, oh, you're noticing a trend, but the fact that you have a military thriller, and then the Dr. ZACK WINSTON series is I saw as labeled a medical conspiracy thriller, and two very different genres, but yet you're able to find those connections and threads of humanity between both of them and weave that into the story. So I would be very interested to know, because I don't know much about the medical suspense genre. And you're actually our first guest on the Bookish Hour to come share your work with us. And I would just like to know, from a writer standpoint, if someone was interested in writing a medical suspense thriller, or if they're like, oh, that sounds like something that I would enjoy, what are you delivering to your reader in the form of, for JC and I, we're doing our cozy mysteries. So we're giving folks a warm, welcoming town with a mystery underlying, but things don't ever get really grisly. But what does a medical thriller provide the reader? And if someone is interested in learning more about it, how would you recommend that they immerse themselves in the genre?
Well, first of all, I think there's some actually some parallel between the world of the military fiction series that I've written, because most of it takes place on the Seventh Fleet flagship, which is a very, as I mentioned, closed, intense environment. And the emergency department of a hospital is very similar. The difference is you get to go home when your shift is over, but during those 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it is that you're practicing there in the emergency department, you're seeing, for the most part, life reduced to its basics. Airway breathing, circulation, mentation, and etc. So it's a very, it can be a very consuming sort of world. So to answer your question, Sarah, I think that dive in and read. You're certainly welcome to read my books. Robin Cook, of course, is the grandfather of the medical thriller series. In fact, he's got a new book coming out pretty soon now. Tess Gerritsen is another person who writes excellent medical thrillers. She is, in fact, a physician. And Patricia Cornwell is another one that I like to read. Kathy Reichs as well, who's a forensic anthropologist, has written many medical thrillers. So you just have to immerse yourself in it. As far as how you learn about it, Google is a great friend, but even better is Google Scholar, which I use a lot for my research. It's scientific peer-reviewed articles about various and sundry medical conditions. So I'll start out saying, well, I wonder how would you kill somebody and make it look like a heart attack? Well, Google Scholar, let's see what our possible poisons could be, and or I'll say, what if I could expose somebody to this or that substance? What would it look like? And again, I do the research, dig out the medical books, look at, like I said, the medical literature. There's a whole textbook of toxicology that I refer to. And the other thing that I look at a lot is forensics, not only medical forensics, but crime scene investigation and the like, because there's such a crossover.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of kind of crossover from, what we're looking up in the mystery community of, how to kill somebody without necessarily being detected. And so it's always fun to see those connections. And with your writing and how you structure your writing session or how you approach the creation of a book, do you have a tried and true process? Have you done things differently with each of your books and you're still kind of figuring out what works? Are you somebody that outlines every last detail, or do you just sit down and see what happens?
Well, to your previous point, Louise Penny, Inspector Gamache, there's a lot of medical forensics in those books, so there is definitely a crossover. To your point there, Sarah. To the process, let me start off by saying I really need more discipline in my process, because I tend to not have a routine. I did outline my first book, and then I didn't really follow the outline, and I thought, well, gee, that was a waste of time. So but it wasn't, because you go through the process, whether it's outlining or plotting or pantsing, as we like to call it, it's all a continuum of getting that story going in your head to the point where you can actually write it down. And I'm sure you probably have the same thing, whether you're a pantser or a plotter. it's a process, and I firmly believe that it's not a process you can hurry up. You can't flog yourself into writing 2,000 words a day. On the other hand, if you don't write any words, then you're procrastinating. So at some point in time, you just have to get down and start writing, because, and I wonder if you two have had this experience. You don't really know where the scene's going to go. You don't really know where the chapter's going to go. And you start writing and the characters tell you.
Well, your comment about the writing the outline and then not following it, I have never felt anything more in my writing soul than that comment. Because yeah, like you can get to a moment where, you know, it's one sentence in the outline that it's like, character A does this. And I'm looking at and saying, okay, they do this. And what does that mean? What is the outcome? Why do they do that? What do they want to get out of it? And yet once you get into that scene, you're kind of taken by your character in the direction that they want to go. And often it's away from the outline.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, I know I've run into the same thing. I'm a big believer. For me, as a whodunit author, I need an outline, because for just the way my brain works, is that I write very in a very linear fashion. So once I've got my story nugget, it's like, okay, somebody did a bad thing, and then I've got to figure out all the other stuff. And I know the good guys are going to prevail in the end, but how do I get there? So for me, it's all, I put together an outline and then I have to follow it. And yes, though I have had times, with my concert hall hit book, I remember, complaining to Sarah that, oh my God, I just realized, halfway through, the person who I thought was going to be the murderer is not going to be the murderer now. And I don't know what to do. I was freaking out, and she's like, it's okay. So it worked out in the end. So that's how I do it, at least.
So my mentor that I mentioned earlier is another author with the same last name, Mike Krentz, who writes romantic suspense and paranormal and everything else. And she writes excellent suspense.
Yes.
Excellent suspense. And I asked her once, I said, do you know who done it when you're writing? She said, no, I don't. I don't know I really don't know till I get to the end.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I my whole thing when I'm building a book is I know the mystery. I know who's dead and why, and building everything out from there is how my process goes. But to not know who killed them, I just find writers who are able to do that so fascinating, because it's like, how does your brain work? Because mine does not work that way.
Well, it helps to have written, 100+ books and been very successful at it. I think you can probably trust yourself a little bit more than those of us who find it a little bit more of a struggle. Not that
I can definitely.
Struggle, but,
Yeah, I tell you what. Yeah, folks, if you're not familiar with Jane Ann Krentz, she also writes as Jane Castle, an amazing author. You need to check out some of her work. And unfortunately, we only got about 20 minutes left. This has just been such a fascinating conversation, Mike. One of the things that I'd like to know from you, as you've told us, you write suspense, you write thrillers. And to me, as I don't read too many thrillers because I get nervous and there's a lot of stress on me as a reader. And so, but what I would like to know is, oftentimes when we think of a thriller, it's like, okay, start on page 1, hit the gas, push it all the way to the floor, and just go. And it's just that suspense, that's heart pounding. How do you approach that? Do you believe in working in opportunities where the characters kind of take a breath, or is it more of are you a believer? Nope, the clock's ticking and we're going to keep going until the end?
One of the things that that I do is I tend to write pretty short chapters. So that helps keep the pace going. And I do as I mentioned earlier, I'll generally have several points of view, and if it's a different point of view, it's a different chapter. I don't mix points of view in the same chapter. Every once in a while, maybe I'll have two scenes in a chapter from different points of view, but that's rare. So that's part of the pacing. But I don't totally depend on the plot. I like flawed characters, and so I also like to do the character development. And so from time to time, throughout the novel, I'll kind of take a breath, and we might get some backstory about the character. For instance, the ZACK WINSTON series, we don't find out about his problems in the Navy till maybe roughly halfway through the book, at a point where it makes sense to tell that backstory because it's driving his decisions in real time as the suspense moves on. So that's a good time to bring it in. But no, it's not nonstop. And frankly, I don't think readers appreciate it if it's just bang, 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 bang. You gotta take a breath every once in a while, and that's where you show who your characters really are.
I think that's wise words of advice. I too appreciate taking a breath when you have that moment of like, okay, like we can just enjoy this before things go south again. And when it comes to giving writing advice, Mike, I'm curious. I noticed in your bio that you are on the board of the Muse Writers Center and teach classes there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind talking about like what the Muse Writing Center is and what kind of classes that you're teaching?
I'd love to talk about the Muse because the Muse is the reason I'm a published author.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
All right.
Yeah, the Muse Writer Center has been in existence for, at least 10 years here in Norfolk, Virginia. And it was founded by one guy, and it's become, right now it's become a center for focusing on the literary arts here in the region. But one of the very positive effects of COVID was having to go virtual. And in going virtual, it became open to the world. And so we were able to attract not only students from all over, but also teachers from all over. For instance, my cousin-in-law Jane and I co-teach a session on core story and genre, and we do that. I'm live physically at the Muse, and she's in Seattle on Zoom, and we bring together a group of students. Some are real time in the room, others are virtual from all over the world, and we workshop basically. So it's a tremendous resource that is available not only locally but across genre. In fact, I have I do an advanced fiction studio, and one of my students is from Tokyo. Oh, wow. And God bless her, she dials in on Zoom at 11 o'clock midnight her time.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And she's a brilliant writer, really awesome writer.
So where can people find out more about Muse?
That would be themuse.org. Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm going to.
I think we may have had a misclick. That the Muse Writing Center, I'm just thinking about all of the amazing resources that we have out there, and just being able to.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem, Mike. We're just talking about how there are so many amazing resources for aspiring as well as published authors who are looking to hone their craft and write more. And Mike, you had mentioned like you wouldn't be a published author without going through these, being with the Muse Writing Center. So from a, I guess, advice standpoint, if we do, with our viewers who may be tinkering with a manuscript, maybe thinking about, reaching out and exploring what the world of publishing has to offer, do you have any other words of wisdom that you can give regarding, the stamina that you need to get into publishing, or getting another pair of eyes to look at your work before you begin submitting? What tips or advice do you have to give
I
to
think
people?
That's definitely the thing to do, but it has to be the right set of eyes. Probably not family, because they'll either be really inclined to love it or inclined to hate it, depending on how your relationship goes. And so it has to be, but it should be people who are willing to give honest, empathetic critique. So it can't be somebody who's going to just blast it all to pieces, but somebody who can also honestly tell you, look, this just doesn't work, or this character doesn't make sense, or this dialogue is really, really stilted, and it's not the least bit realistic. I learned the lesson. I'll be very quick about this. I went to a pitch fest in New York, the Algonquian Writers Center, which is another one I highly recommend, and they do a lot of virtual stuff online. But they still do a pitch fest, and you come in, and it's like a 3-day deal, and you learn about pitching, and then you pitch agents. And I went up there thinking, well, gosh, I wonder which agent's going to pick up my story. And this was the first Zack Winston book. And about halfway through it, I realized that it was not the least bit ready for prime time. And so I came back home, and I said, I got to do something besides sit by myself and write. And that's where I discovered the Muse. I went and joined a writer's workshop. I got some excellent critique and rewrote the whole thing, changed it from first person to third person, and got it published. So yeah, there's just no substitute. You cannot do it alone. You write it alone, but you need to socialize it as well.
Great advice there, folks. And Sarah and I, I can't tell people enough how much I rely on Sarah, as an example of how much she helps me. And whether it's I want to whine about something, or she's going to read a manuscript or something, it really is while writing is solitary, it also is a community too. So
yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
When I had my first critique outside of the people that I was comfortable with seeing my work, I went through the Word document, and every single comment that was listed, for some reason in my head, I just automatically had it in this like very mean, purposefully tearing you down voice. And I got to the end, it's like, why did I read it that way? Because none of it was really said, or all the feedback that I was getting was completely valid. And it was my own insecurities that was putting this tone into it. So what you had mentioned, Mike, about being empathetic, yes, from the reviewer standpoint, but also when you're reading the critique, like, give yourself some grace and know that the person is there to help you, not tear you down. Because it makes the whole process a lot easier.
You definitely need to have some thick skin, and you cannot be overly sensitive to criticism or critique. I like to say there's a difference between critique and criticism. But yeah, it's important to. I don't know. Are you all familiar with the rule of thirds critiques? A third of the comments you're going to go, did you even read it? No, this doesn't apply at all. Another third is, oh my gosh, why didn't I why didn't I see that? Why didn't I think of that? Of course, you immediately are going to incorporate those comments. And then the middle third is the one where you really have to do the work, because you have to evaluate whether or not it's going to work for your novel. One of the things that we try to encourage people to do in our writers' workshops and studios is, when you comment, remember that it's the author's story, and the author is writing the story the way the author is writing the story. You might write the story a different way. So telling the author how you would write it doesn't really help. You need to tell them how they can write it better. So that's what we try to do.
This is some valuable advice you're all getting, folks, tonight. Those of you who are watching live, and then those of you who are going to catch this later online, you're getting a lot of free gold here from Mike. So, it's, you're all lucking in. And by the same token, though, I hate to be the bad guy, because we're almost out of time. We only got about 10 minutes left. So now is the time where we kind of, to wrap things up, talk about a little bit, what are you watching, what are you reading, what are you listening to? Sarah, I'm gonna, pick on you first. What's on your, what are you checking out?
Well, we had our graphic novel discussion earlier on a Bookish Moment this week. And of course, as soon as we were done, I was like, I gotta go get back into my manga. I just love the light, happy stories that I'm reading. And now that I'm participating in National Novel Writing Month, I always get all the words jumbled up. My brain is increasingly more fried as I get into my reading time. So the new series that I started, it's called Love, That's an Understatement. Is very cute. I'm enjoying it. It's only 3 books. So unfortunately it's going to be over very quickly for me. But I very much, the setup of the studious human versus the rebel rouser, and them coming to find common ground to make each other happy. I'm a sucker for it. In regards to listening, a new podcast that that recently dropped this week is called Dark Arenas, and I am very much enjoying it. It's a little bit different than my usual true crime, which might shock some of our audience members. But this is about exploring the careers that are not necessarily publicized in regards to the crime world or the world of protection. There's an episode about a Secret Service agent, an episode about a forensic facial reconstruction artist. I'm trying to remember what the other. They had released 3 episodes so far, and I can't remember what the third one was. But it's really cool to see these different careers that I don't normally come across when I'm listening to a true crime podcast. Like, yes, we're hearing about the U.S. Marshals, we're hearing about the Secret Service and the work that they're doing, but we're not understanding everything that they're doing and what it entails. So it's a really fascinating look behind the curtain. And then for watching, we recently started, since Halloween has passed and our scary movie time is now ended. We're watching the 2nd season of The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. And as someone who read the Great Hunt, which is what the 2nd season is based on, Robert Jordan's Great Hunt, I don't understand why they are choosing to change the source material, but I'm here for the ride, and I'm going to trust that they know what they're doing. And so far it's been very enjoyable, but I'm also like, wow, this is a really strange book to TV show adaptation. And as a writer, it's like, why would somebody, like, if you have the book, like, why would you make up things that are completely not even remotely related to the book? So I find it's very fascinating to see that part of it come to light.
Yeah. Well, cool. Okay, Michael, how about you?
Well, I'm reading a number of things from fellow authors that I want to mention. One is a fellow by the name of Bruce Leonard, who I almost forgot his last name. who writes the Hadley Carroll series of cozy mysteries, basically, and it's based in Paducah, Kentucky, which is the quilt capital of the world. So there's a tie into quilting, and Bruce does an excellent job with that. Shanessa Gloom, Gluhm, writes mysteries. Her current one is River of Crows, which follows, and the first one was Enemies of Doves, and they both are kind of multi-generational family novels. The third one that I want to mention is Rob Sanborn, who writes historical fiction, and his newest, the final of his 3-book series, the Painted Soul series, is coming out the end of this month, Master of the Abyss, and he writes very well.
Rob is a good friend of our of the Bookish Hour. He's been on twice, and I think we have him. I think he's going to be coming back to talk about the third novel early 2024. Okay. So we love Rob here.
Yeah, Rob's a good guy, and I've had the privilege of beta reading Master of the Abyss, which is the third, and it is superb. Really, really outstanding writing. I am a big fan of some of Michael Connelly's work. I particularly like his Ballard and Bosch series. Everybody knows Harry Bosch from the TV show, but there's, I think, now 5 books in the series where there's a younger police officer by the name of Renee Ballard. And so that's the woman thing again for me, and how she's the perfect counterpoint to Harry Bosch. And David Baldacci's also got a female FBI agent. I can't for the life of me remember her name off the top of my head, but it's very good. So that's what I'm reading. We're watching Better Call Saul.
Oh, yep.
The final season, and I've decided that if they ever make the ZACK WINSTON series into a TV show, that Rhea Seehorn is going to play Bridget Larson, the lawyer, because she would be perfect for it.
She's amazing. She really is.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, cool. Well, thanks. Just real quick here, just a couple of things. As far as what I'm reading, I want to send a shout out to, again, Sarah's Over My Dead blog. I read it. I really, really, really enjoyed it. So much fun. I want to go to visit the Copper Pot and all these other cool places in the coast of Massachusetts. I'm also reading Razor Girl by Carl Hyacin. Because I just, Elmore Leonard, Carl Hyacin, those are 2 writers that have greatly influenced my writing in recent years, and it's so much fun, and just Carl's stories are so over the top, laugh out loud funny, and just so intricate and amazing. I just love them. As far as what I'm listening to a podcast recommended by a guest recently, She Done It, SHEDUNNIT. It is a look at the golden age of fiction, talking about the female authors. And so it's really interesting, kind of taking a deep dive into that period of our history as mystery authors. And I also want to send a quick mention as far as what I've been watching. Took a trip in the Wayback Machine. I decided to try something different. Mission Impossible, the TV series, all the way back to 1966, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. So that's what I've been doing.
I went through a summer, JC, where I for some reason we just kept getting DVDs of all of like classic TV shows in the 60s. And one of them was Get Smart, and just watching all of the original Get Smarts and being like, what is this? But also very much enjoying it. And Get Smart. And The Love Boat. The Love Boat, for some reason, that's iconic TV for me.
Yes, it is.
Good times. Well, folks, we're almost out of time here. Mike, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been educational. It's been fun. Again, thank you for your service, not only in the military, but, your time as a doctor saving lives. One of the things that we'd like, to know from you is for folks who'd like to find out more about your books, where can they find you online? And, you know, are you doing any like book signings or any in-person things?
So my website is mikejkrentz.com. The J is important. So mikejkrentz.com. I'm on Facebook as Mike Krentz Author, also Instagram, and that's pretty much it for social media. Tomorrow, if anybody happens to be here in the Tidewater area, I'm going to the Hampton Roads Writers Conference, and I will have a table there with all my books.
Very cool.
And the next one, I think, for me is the Williamsburg Writers Conference in February.
Okay.
Excellent. And folks, Mike's website will be in our show notes, so we'll be able to click on it right from there as well. Yeah. And we've got folks chiming up in the chat. Robin's letting us know how much she loves Jane Krentz, and as well as agreeing with the fact that changing the source material in a TV show when you have the book right in front of you is always questionable. Mark is thanking us for a great episode, and we're thank you everyone for being here. It's always a delight to chat with you all and to be bookish. And Mike, once more, thank you for being here, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing what is next for Kate, for Dr. Winston, and everything, all of your writing endeavors. So again, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And for our viewers, we will be back with another new episode at the end of November. Because of the Thanksgiving holiday, we are skipping a week. We're going to be joined by Christina Romerol talking about A Nutcracker Nightmare, nice. Which is going to be perfect for queuing us up into the holiday season. So until then, everybody, stay bookish. Have a good one.